Hello, you're watching Money Talks with me, Widen. Coming up on the program, in a move that threatens to widen the global trade war, Trump announces new import taxes of 25% on foreign cars and car parts coming into the US. De-dollarization takes center stage at this year's Bauer Forum for Asia, and retailers in the UK are cashing in on Mother's Day spending. Stock markets closed the week in the red as investors brace for looming tariffs and fears of a full-blown trade war. US President Donald Trump announced an additional 25% levy on imports of cars and car parts in a move that threatens to widen the global trade war, sending stocks plummeting across the board. The tariffs are set to come into effect on April 2nd, a self-imposed deadline by the president to unveil fresh reciprocal tariffs against its trade partners. The European Union and Canada criticized the move and threatened countermeasures. Meanwhile, gold prices reached a fresh high on Friday, crossing the $3,085 mark for the first time.
Yeah, we're going to have very strong policing, and it's pretty easy to do. If parts are made in America and a car isn't, those parts are not going to be taxed or tariffed. And we'll have very strong policing as far as that's concerned. For the most part, I think it's going to lead cars to be made in one location.
There are difficult debates between Europe and America over trade and tariffs. And there are calls to revive ideas of European autonomy. Let me be absolutely clear. This is not the time to go it alone. Not for Europe or North America. The global security challenges are too great for any of us to face on our own.
Meanwhile, Chinese car maker BYD has recently rolled out autonomous driving capabilities, closely mirroring what Tesla offers in its vehicles. But that's not all. BYD has also surpassed Tesla in revenue. The EV maker has firmly planted itself at the top, outpacing Tesla for a full year. BYD's revenue reached $107 billion in 2024, not only crossing the $100 billion threshold, but also overtaking Tesla's $97.7 billion. Tesla still edged out BYD in pure EV sales with 1.79 million vehicles sold compared to BYD's 1.76 million. But BYD's success stretches far beyond electric cars alone. When hybrid models are included, BYD's total sales reached a record-breaking 4.3 million in 2024. Tesla, which focuses exclusively on fully electric vehicles, couldn't match this feat. BYD stock has soared by roughly 50% so far this year, a reflection of the company's strong performance and the ongoing rally in China's tech sector. In contrast, Tesla's shares have taken a hit, dropping 26.6% in 2025. The reasons behind the decline are multifaceted: a lack of fresh products, controversy surrounding CEO Elon Musk's politics, and growing concerns about US tariffs. Looking ahead, BYD continues to gain momentum. In the first 2 months of 2025, the company's sales rose year-on-year, while Tesla's sales saw a decline over the same period. Joining us now from London is Greg Swenson, founding partner at corporate finance firm Brigg McAdam. Good to have you on the program with us, Greg. Now, Trump's tariffs on auto imports has already spooked investors across the board. How do you see this play out?
Yeah, I think the most obvious reaction from the markets is that markets don't like uncertainty. So I think it's more of the lack of an end game, the lack of understanding what will the ultimate tariffs be, rather than the tariffs themselves. In many respects, the tariffs are small in terms of taxes. They're very small considering the tariffs imposed on the U.S. by our trading partners that are much higher. So in many ways, this is just reciprocal tariffs and creating a more level playing field. But also, if you look at them relative to the basically tax reform and deregulation, it's really insignificant. So, there might be a few hundred billion of changes in terms of, the outcomes from these tariffs. But on the other hand, we're looking at over 5 trillion in relief from both tax reform as well as regulatory relief on the U.S. economy. So I just think a lot of this impulse from the markets is just the uncertainty, not ultimately what the long game is.
Right, and now these tariffs also include vital components for car manufacturing in the US. Surely this will impact US car makers also?
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part of the tariffs is the auto parts that cross the border several times before the product is finally delivered. So there could be some friction there. You have, the possibility that a part can go, over the border back and forth. However, again, the president is putting together an economic plan, an overall economic plan, where the manufacturers will benefit, again, from deregulation and tax reform. For example, if a part or an end product is made in the United States, they'll only be subject to a 15% corporate tax. And that corporate rate will make American companies more competitive. And it's, probably will see more expansion of factories, equipment, and machinery, because there'll be immediate expensing from a tax perspective, immediate expensing on those items. So, there will be a lot of very positive economic outcomes that come from the rest of the economic policy, and the tariffs will only serve the purpose of some additional revenue. It won't necessarily move the needle, but it's important given the debt crisis we have in America. It's a great negotiating tool. You've seen it used successfully already with several different countries. It will protect some critical industries in the United States. And again, we the U.S. just cannot afford to continue funding trade deficits with both the EU and China. I think there are some countries where the trade deficit isn't as meaningful, but the most important issue here is the continued funding by the U.S. capital markets of the trade deficits, 180 billion with the EU, 330 billion with China. Those are just unsustainable from a debt perspective.
And how is the US preparing for potential countermeasures from its trade partners?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And look, in a trade war, the country with the trade surplus always loses. This is much more destructive to the EU, to Canada, to Mexico. Any retaliatory effects, again, which are relatively unfair because in many respects, the tariffs that the president is imposing are just bringing us up to the level of our trading counterparties. But more importantly, when you run a massive surplus, which both the EU and China are doing, and Mexico, Canada, you can't win a trade war because the trade, specifically their exports to the U.S., are a significant part of their GDP, whereas for the Americans, it's insignificant. So again, the trade war, if there is one, will be lost. I think this is just posturing at this point, but I don't think you'll see any permanent retaliation because it just damages their own country and their own economy.
Right, and looking at the EV market now, BYD has overtaken Tesla in terms of revenue. What does this mean for Tesla's position in the market, and how much longer can it survive given the Chinese competition?
Yeah, I think the entire world faces that challenge. The EU has 50% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. They've got up to 10% tariffs on U.S. vehicles, although they've just backed away from that recently. So, look, I think competition from low-cost China is a threat to the entire EV market around the world, not just Tesla. And perhaps Tesla was overvalued for a while and needed a bit of a correction. And then you've got the political hostility against Elon Musk. That might account for some of the stock trading off. But I think the most important thing, as you pointed out, is competition from China. It's really difficult for competitors in this market to compete with China, where they have low wage, even slave labor in their country, and they're not afraid to drop prices below profitability in order to keep market share. So it's a very mercantilist behavior coming from the Chinese state-owned companies. I don't think it's sustainable, but I think you'll see tariffs, not just by the US, but by the EU and other countries to protect their industries and make sure that there's not basically product dumping coming from the Chinese.
All right, Greg Swenson, founding partner at Brigg McAdam, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As the Bauer Forum for Asia convenes under the theme Asia in the Changing World Towards a Shared Future, discussions on de-dollarization have never been more prominent. With growing global uncertainty over the US's trade and foreign policy, countries including China are accelerating efforts to find a viable alternative to the dollar. Jamie Santerso reports.
This building in Hong Kong houses Taifeng Shipping Limited, except at its registered address you won't find the company. Taifeng, incorporated in 2023, was sanctioned by the US in October last year over the shipment of Iranian crude oil on behalf of Iran's Revolutionary Guard.
The US is really the only jurisdiction that has that type of extraterritorial reach.
The number of Chinese and Hong Kong-based companies that have been sanctioned by Washington in recent years has skyrocketed. Under the Biden administration, around 400 were added to the so-called entities list. Saskia Riedbrook is executive director of the Association of Certified Sanctions Specialists and says the US dollar's status as the world's international reserve currency gives America unrivaled unilateral sanction power.
The fact that a lot of the payments in trade internationally are made in US dollars gives the US jurisdiction over any transaction that is paid in US dollars.
But the increased use of sanction is leading many countries to accuse the US of weaponizing its currency. China, along with fellow BRICS nations, is at the forefront of calls for change.
The objective is not to replace the American dollars. Just to have healthy competition and to remove this monopoly status away and to have a competition and have alternative.
In a separate effort to counter foreign sanctions, China this week said it would step up the implementation of legislation targeting what's been described as discriminatory measures against Chinese citizens or entities.
But the dollar's strength, accounting for 90% of global foreign transactions, means any effects of such efforts might be limited. In January, US President Donald Trump also threatened BRICS members with 100% tariffs and exclusion from US markets if the bloc pushes for de-dollarization. Experts warn such threats may accelerate a shift.
The move towards strengthening those options will become more profound in case United States goes ahead with imposition of tariffs or any such measures which unequivocally damage the economic interest of the people who use the currency, then there will be more action towards de-dollarization.
But as concern over the dollar's use as a foreign policy tool grows, China could play a key role in efforts to end its dominance. Jamie Santirso, TRT World, Beijing.
The crypto market promised decentralization, trust and freedom, but that image is fading fast. While billions pour in and tech evolves, bad actors are exploiting loopholes faster than laws can catch up. With arrests and scandals mounting, can crypto still claim to be the future of finance? Let's look at some of the biggest events shaking the industry. Alexei Andriunin, CEO of crypto firm GotBit, just pleaded guilty in a major US fraud case. From 2018 to 2024, he was running what's known as wash trading, basically fake trades to boost the value of obscure tokens. Prosecutors say the firm made tens of millions doing this. Now Andriunin faces up to 2 years in prison and a $23 million forfeit. And remember Sam Bankman-Fried? He was once seen as the golden boy of crypto. But in 2022, his company FTX collapsed, taking billions in customer funds with it. He was sentenced to 25 years for fraud after it came out that he'd misused money and made shady deals behind the scenes. Investors lost over $11 billion and a lot of trust in the system. Then there's Celsius Network. It started as a crypto lending platform, But by 2023, its founder, Alex Mashinsky, was under arrest. He misled customers about the safety of their money, and now he's pleaded guilty too. He's agreed to give up $48 million and could face up to 30 years behind bars. And finally, some of the most extreme examples. Farooq Fatih Ozar, founder of Bodex, got a jaw-dropping sentence of 11,196 years in prison for defrauding investors of $2 billion. Meanwhile, Do Kwon, the man behind Terraform Labs, is fighting extradition. His failed stablecoin project reportedly wiped $40 billion in investor funds. Mark Humphrey-Jenner, Associate Professor of Finance at the UNSW Business School, says recent arrests could boost trust, but the crypto world still operates in legal grey zones.
And the arrests certainly will help to shore up some confidence. And some of these arrests relate to things that would ordinarily be illegal in normal or standard financial markets. So, for example, wash trading, well, that would be straight up market manipulation with ordinary financial instruments. You do that on stocks, and it would be illegal as market manipulation. Similarly, in the case of FTX, if they took money in from customers for one reason, then they used it for another reason, well, that is fraudulent because you're transforming the risk profile of the money you've taken in. Similarly with the allegations against myriad other exchanges. And just recently, the US has also sought via India the arrest of another crypto entrepreneur who reportedly had been engaging in slightly illegal behavior, who was running Garantex, for example, and that's going to go through to trial. So we're seeing a lot of these arrests. It certainly is going to clean up some of the behavior that people are more concerned about. But many of these exchanges are really outside the jurisdiction of, for example, the United States, meaning it's actually rather difficult to seek penalties. But it certainly does show us the authorities are taking the matter seriously, even if there's going to be a lot of them that slip through the cracks. But of course, sometimes the authorities do just happen to check on things, so notice unusual movements, notice what looks like a pump and dump, which could potentially enliven the ire of authorities, or notice things like wash trading, which might really enliven their focus on specific changes or exchanges, when they notice that with specific cryptos.
Tariffs and trade wars have long weighed on a wide range of industries, and Italian cheese may be the next casualty. With a new round of trade restrictions looming, Italian producers and exporters are bracing for another painful blow, one that could make cheese a luxury for American consumers, as Omar Baccalolo reports.
Whether it's a plate of creamy fettuccine, a classic margherita pizza, or a fresh caprese salad, Americans love Italian food, but that love could soon be tested. A looming trade battle is set to make a crucial ingredient, Italian cheese, much harder to afford. After months of threats, US President Donald Trump is set to announce widespread reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, targeting countries he believes impose unfair trade barriers on US goods.
We at Italian Farmers Confederation believe that tariffs are counterproductive for both those who implement it and those who it affects. Because on the side of those who implement, there would be an increase in prices for the families who are buying the products. There would be higher costs to buy dairy products.
Italian farmers are now fearing that history might repeat itself. The country's cheese industry was hit hard during Trump's first term, which saw a devastating 25% tariff imposed on European goods as punishment for EU subsidies to aerospace giant Airbus. Producers say the impact of tariffs would ripple across the sector, affecting thousands of businesses and farmers. They also fear higher prices might push American consumers toward cheaper, domestically made substitutes.
51% of the pecorino cheese produced in Italy is exported to the US. There are 8,500 businesses making pecorino, 8,000 in Sardinia and 500 in our region. We have an economic turnover of $172 million as far pecorino's export to the US is concerned. Our concern is that if the tariffs will be at 25%, exports could suffer a decrease, which we have estimated at up to $45 million.
But some producers believe the impact on Italian cheese may not be as severe as feared.
We don't have big fears at the moment. Firstly, because it's a product that is sold a class, let's say, fairly high, which should have no problem paying more for it. On the other hand, there is a fact that Pecorino Romano about a year ago, because of a shortage of milk, had seen wholesale prices rise more than 20% higher than today. Right now, in my opinion, even if they were to put tariffs at 20-25%, we wouldn't have the price of a year ago.
Some Italians are also looking to Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, who has built close ties with Trump ally Elon Musk. There is hope that diplomatic maneuvering could help soften the blow for Italy's iconic food industry. Ömer Bakkaloğlu, TRT World.
Rising food prices in Sweden are making it tougher to shop for favourites, sparking boycotts of major supermarket chains. So what's driving this inflation? Emre Boz finds out.
The cost of food in Sweden keeps rising, and so too does people's frustration.
Every day the prices go up, by maybe 5 krona for a carton of milk. The other day I was going to buy nuts and it was very shocking. 3.50 for ordinary nuts, which would have been 100 per kilo.
Reports show grocery prices in January rose nearly 20% over 2 years. The government now forecasts inflation for 2025 at 2.5%, higher than expected. This surge has fueled an online campaign to boycott dominant retailers like Willys and ICA. Some shoppers are going further, travelling long distances for cheaper options.
They do a lot of discounts here. Discount, discount, discount. And I travel from Varberg to do my shopping at Prisma. The meat is not that expensive here either. Prisma is a good store. It helps people. Coop and Ica are too expensive. You cannot buy from these shops all the time.
But are supermarkets to blame? These rising costs mostly stem from Sweden's reliance on food imports, which make up 50% of its supply, leaving the economy vulnerable to global market swings. A weak Swedish krona is also driving up prices. The IMF estimates the krona was undervalued between 10 to 20% in 2024, primarily due to a strong US dollar. Meanwhile, the economy is not doing well. Sweden's GDP growth has been sluggish, dipping into negative territory twice in 2 years. Though it rose to 0.8% in the fourth quarter of last year, growth is still below 1%. The central bank has stayed dovish, maintaining its rate-cutting trend, lowering rates to 2.25% in January. This keeps borrowing costs low to encourage spending, but with the economy lagging and prices soaring, Swedish shoppers might just have to tighten their belts. Emre Boz, TRT World.
On Sunday, the UK will celebrate Mother's Day and the women who shape our lives with love, strength and endless patience. But for businesses, Mother's Day is more than just a heartfelt occasion. It's a key moment to connect with customers that's worth billions of dollars. Tulay Kalyon Haznederoğlu has more from London.
The British date for Mother's Day is different from anywhere else in the world. In the UK, Mother's Day, also known as Modern Sunday, is celebrated 3 weeks before Easter. Both local businesses and major brands are making the most of this special occasion and retail opportunity. Consumer spending for Mother's Day 2025 is expected to reach $3 billion, a 5% increase from 2024. Consumers plan to spend an average of $155 on gifts for their mums, an increase of $22 from last year. Shoppers intend to spend an average of $65 on food and drink for the occasion, with supermarkets upselling luxury items such as premium meats and drinks.
I'm personally not sort of a big spender on Mother's Day, and more kind of I think like a thoughtful phone call or like a card or something I think is probably more meaningful to my mom at this point. I think maybe when you're younger that kind of breakfast in bed is quite nice, but I think at this point, nice phone call.
Oh, I love Mother's Day. I'm probably gonna buy my mother some flowers, some nice chocolate. I would spend around probably 70 pounds, I would say, because she would be mad if I spent too much on her, because I'm still young. Treat your mother well, though. That's what I would say.
Not much at all. I normally just get a card for my mum. Cards and make lunch for her.
But what if motherhood were an actual job? On average, mums prepare 780 meals, do 728 loads of laundry, and help with 468 homework assignments per year. Moms take on an average of 13 different roles for their children, acting as everything from a driver to a motivational speaker, from a chef to a personal assistant. And if these roles were paid as a professional occupation, a mother's salary would amount to $230,000 a year, adding up to $4.1 million by the time their children turn 18. Research also shows that 9 in 10 mothers report feeling the mental and physical toll of caregiving, often referred to as motherload. Being a mom is one of the toughest jobs in the world, with 64% saying they find it more stressful than having a full-time job. Yet 82% of moms say they wouldn't change it for the world. But this study isn't just about numbers, it's about celebrating mothers and caregivers all around the globe. Tülay Kalyon, Haznedaroğlu, TRT World, London.
Well, that's all from Money Talks for now. From me and the whole team here in Istanbul, thanks for watching.